guys, welcome back to the Black and Raw podcast. I'm your host, Tino Kudatonda Ravensabala. I ain't gonna repeat that. Here's a podcast that's going to dialogue and the space for black men to be their most authentic selves. Now, my guest today is Mark Tuggle. And Mark has created a book about black men's mental health, which is called Cultural Silence and Wounded Souls. And I think you guys are really going to, one, enjoy the book, but also I think you're going to enjoy this conversation because we talk about Mark's journey with his own mental health and some of the strategies and tools that he's used to be able to get himself through those dark and difficult times. And we also discuss on the podcast some of the issues that black men are facing right now with just society, but also in terms of their mental health and how we can approach that situation and help men discover good mental health tools that can help them, and also discover their voice and discover how to say what's upsetting them and, use the right language to be able to describe their emotions. So this is a really good episode for anyone that's suffering through mental health or that knows a brother that is suffering through mental health. And I really hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Hope you really get some good value out of it. And I think with that, I'm going to let you guys listen to this episode. So here is my episode with Mark Tuggle. So, Mark, welcome to the Black and Raw podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you, Tino. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you.
No, that's brilliant. And so we can sort of just get into the meat of the episode. And when I saw your message on LinkedIn, your book looked really interesting to me, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I thought it'd be quite appropriate to get you on and to talk about it. So thank you for joining me. And so, Mark, you've created a book about black men's mental health, and I guess I just maybe want to start with what made you want to write this book about black men's mental health.
Here's my book.
There you go. And anyone listening, you can't see it, but that means you just need to watch on YouTube.
Yeah, and it's on Amazon. Cultural Silence and Wounded Souls, Black Men Speak About Mental Health. Well, initially, God put this on my spirit about 4 years ago, and I wanted to write about my own mental health journey. I wasn't sure if it was just going to be an essay or a poem or a haiku. I wasn't sure. I just needed to express what I had been holding on to for quite some time, because I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and moderate depression in February of '95.
Okay. And
for many, many years, I never talked about it. And you can't take a look at what you don't talk about. You can't change what you don't admit. And so, God gave me the courage to start writing. And then I called a friend of mine who's also a writer, and, we just decided maybe we ought to put together a book. So we thought, let's get maybe 15 to 20 guys, ask them to tell their stories, some personal, some professional, to get that balance. And 4 years later, dun, da, da, da. So I'm it's crazy because you mentioned LinkedIn. That's where I got a lot of the context from.
Mm.
Most of the men in this anthology I've never met before, never even had a conversation. Just
okay.
We live in a digital world.
Yeah. And
so it just started with me just wanting to talk about my own experiences with anxiety, depression, trauma, stress, and just kind of get that out of my head and just really, get some freedom, some relief, some clarity, some insight, some perspective.
No, that sounds really interesting. And I think, as you said, you can only start to process something once you start to understand it, or even just start to talk about it and start to deal with it. I want to know, you said that you got diagnosed in '95. When did you, how did that look for you? How did your mental health look throughout the years?
Well, 3 months prior, I was diagnosed HIV positive. So that was in December '94. And I remember 7 years prior, my partner at the time, he was diagnosed HIV positive as well. At that time, doctors were telling people, you have 6 months to live. And I've actually written a play called 6 Months to Live. So I had those fears, about will I wake up tomorrow? So that create a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of nervousness. I was just became obsessed with my own demise. And so, they wanted me to take medication because the United States is all about drugs. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's not about healing, it's about medication,
big
not
pharma.
meditation, but medication. And so I had some worries about that, and I didn't trust the medical system. So I started writing, and writing is very therapeutic. It really gives me a chance to get it out of my head into my heart and try to get, like I said, some clarity and insight and perspective. So I just needed some release, and I'm glad I got that, which led me to therapy. And ironically enough, I thought therapy was for rich, crazy white people.
I've heard that. We've all heard that one before, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but I had a friend, and she was in therapy, and I was attracted to her spirit, and she had quite a life, but she had found some self-acceptance and self-love. So I wanted what she had, and I took her suggestion. So I was in and out of therapy for about 10 years. It was very helpful.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I mean, being diagnosed with HIV definitely, I guess, especially when you're being told you've got 6 months to live. And I think there was probably a lot of propaganda during that time of, sort of a negativity towards people with HIV and stuff like that. And not an understanding of like how you can actually live a fruitful life with it. So it makes sense that, your mental well-being was affected by something which is quite life-changing. And as you said, you're thinking about your demise every day, like that has an effect on you. That definitely has an effect on you.
Say it again.
I said that thinking of your demise every day definitely does have an effect on you. So it makes sense, that your body sort of responded with an anxiety of what's going to happen.
Definitely had a major impact on my mental health.
Yeah. So I'd like to find out sort of, you said that you had got people for your books, that you had got different men to come and talk about their experiences, and that you never even met a lot of them before you had even started talking about it, which is interesting in terms of how you got men to start talking about something which is so sort of personal to them. And so I guess, how was it interviewing these men about their mental health for the book?
It was different because there's 30 different men. I may have had 6 telephone conversations.
Mm.
We live in a digital world, and people are more likely to communicate through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, or email or texting than pick up a phone and have a conversation. It's just the world that we live in, like it or not. Social media has really kind of like shifted the way we communicate. And so I would just connect with somebody and tell them I have an idea. Are you interested? I got a lot of rejection, a lot of apathy, a lot of indifference, but eventually I got men who said they were interested, and I asked them, I gave them a word count, and they would email me, and I would look it over, and we would go back and forth until we agreed on something. And that's pretty much how we got it done. It took a few years. At one point, Tino, my computer crashed, and I lost everything.
Oh, wow.
Like, I lost everything. And this book is 148 pages. Poof, all gone. But thank God I had the presence of mind to print out each of the essays, because they're mostly essays, and I had to type it up, with my hand. I'm not a great typer, but a day at a time. And I was very despondent. I was in a dark place for months. I started to feel like maybe this is not God's will for me. I started to feel like a loser. I was embarrassed. I didn't save the information. People would tell me to get the chip, and I wouldn't listen. I was procrastinating, but through perseverance, resiliency, steadfastness, I was able to put it all together, and here we are.
Yeah, that's a long process. And whenever you're doing anything, like even when I was at uni and like your computer crashes and you're like, oh my gosh, all that work that I've just done, like everything that I've got is now gone. But I don't know, I guess going back through the stories again and hand typing them out, was there any sort of benefit to that? Like, were you able to, I guess, digest the stories even more?
Yeah, it really helped me to appreciate the process and not focus on the outcome, and I was able to take another look at the contributions. They're mostly essays. There's a couple guys who've done poetry. There's one guy, he's an actor. He did a monologue.
Mm.
There's another guy, he's a rapper. He's from Nigeria. He contributed some song lyrics, but they're mostly essays. And to reread them over and over again really helped me to appreciate the fact that God used me as a vessel to tell their stories in a way in which they may have not been told before, because I think that Black people have the greatest stories never told. And even Maya Angelou says that there's no greater agony than a story untold. And for most of us, we go through our whole lives and we don't tell people what we've been through. And so on the epitaph, it doesn't say trauma, but it should, because we all have to deal with the trauma of being brought here against our will, never being paid for it, and still suffering under white supremacy, white patriarchy, white privilege, white power, and a system that doesn't value us as human beings. You know, we're still considered less than. And a lot of us feel that way, you know. So my computer crashed, but I didn't.
That's good. That's good. That's very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, thank God for prayer and meditation.
Yeah. You said that one of the guys was from Nigeria, which is really good. Like, what was the demographics of the men that you got? Like, were they all, obviously not, they weren't all from US, because you said one was from Nigeria, but where were the locations that you got people from?
Most are from the US, from around the US, the Northeast, the Midwest, the South. But there's one guy from Nigeria, there's one guy from London, there's one guy from another part of the UK, there's one guy from the Caribbean, there's one guy from the Dominican Republic. So I wanted to get a cross-section of men from different perspectives, different walks of life. So you've got advocates, you've got clinicians, educators, businessmen, filmmakers, journalists, lawyers, musicians, and they all are between ages maybe 25 and 65. And they all have something unique to tell. And it's really a beautiful mosaic. I've had women say, thank you, because I'm going to give this to my nephew. I'm going to give this to my brother. I'm going to give this to my husband. I'm going to give this to my coworker. So even though the book centers Black men, and I wanted to do that, the women who have been supportive have told me that it really has helped them in their relationship with other men.
Yeah, definitely. I guess also for the women, it's like, obviously as men we find it quite hard to talk about our feelings. So for those that are in relationships with men, for those that, you know, have brothers, have uncles and nephews, you know, it's a window into what they may be thinking and feeling without necessarily having to have that discussion with them yet. Because I mean, you can try, but sometimes, you know, men aren't willing to open up and actually have those conversations.
Exactly. So I think, you know, the idea is that people will be able to identify, connect, and relate. And even if they can't bring themselves to say, I can identify, maybe they know somebody who has been through similar experiences, and they may want to give the book to someone without accusing them or labeling them or implying that they have some type of a mental health issue, but just saying, I came across this book, you might want to read it.
Yeah, definitely. Did you see any, in terms of we're talking about the different locations that people are from, did you see anything specifically about maybe the struggles that men had in, you know, Nigeria or Dominican Republic or London or in the USA? Were there much differences, or was there more similarities in the stories?
I would say that there are more similarities because they're all writing about anxiety, depression, isolation, loss, PTSD, stress, trauma, paranoid schizophrenia, suicide ideation. Those issues transcend geography, you know, and we're united by our biology. So even though a guy in Los Angeles has a different worldview than a guy in London, they still have the same feelings. So that's the common thread, is how they feel. Maybe the difference is how they react to it, how they respond. But I didn't notice like people in Philadelphia being different from somebody in New Mexico and how they dealt with it. I'm just kind of dealing with this as Black men and their trauma and their pain. And the fact that they're able to write about it, for me, that's part of the healing process.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a lot of people on my podcast that I've talked to that, have gone through mental health or even have gone through traumatic events, and they've always said that writing is sort of a therapy for them. And even for me, I'm quite fortunate that I've got a sort of a good mental health usually. Um, Even when stuff is going bad, like I've always found that writing or even just voice noting how I'm feeling at that moment really just, like, it's weird how it's still there, but it sort of takes the edge off. It sort of is a release that once it's down on paper, it's like I might still feel crappy, but there's something different after you've done that, you know?
Yeah, writing and putting on paper, it becomes that much harder to deny my true nature. And it kind of loses, the feelings lose their power
Mm,
because I'm no longer consumed because it's not on the inside anymore. And I get to see it, and then it becomes real. And then now I can actually talk about what I've been thinking and feeling because I didn't really have a voice. Like I didn't have an emotional vocabulary, most of us don't. And so we don't know how to say, I feel insecure. I feel disrespected. I feel like in the Black community, now we say, because it's something different every 10 years.
it always
I'm
changes the
62,
lingo.
right? So now we say, I feel some type of way, right? Are you familiar with that phrase?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
But that doesn't tell me anything, right,
No,
about
there's
how
no
you feel.
description.
But that's what we do. It's like Paul Laurence Dunbar talks about the mask, and so we have that. I feel some type of way, but do you feel disrespected? Do you feel hurt? It's really hard for a Black man to say I feel hurt.
Mm,
We'll say I feel pissed off, but to say I feel hurt, that means I got to be vulnerable. I got to
yeah.
be transparent, which creates fear, the fear of the unknown. Will I be accepted? Will I be judged? Will I be criticized? Will I be feminized? Because you get called a faggot, a sissy, a punk, all that kind of stuff as a kid. And so you learn very on, maybe I shouldn't talk about this and that because no one's going to love me if I tell you how I really feel.
Yeah, it's crazy how when you think of it, like women have the vocabulary to express how they're feeling usually. But it's also because they've been socialized since they were children in terms of like the girls hang out and they all talk together and they can openly share what's going on with them, whereas the lads, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's, playing sports with the boys isn't fun, but we don't do much sit down and talking. It's more action. It's more, I would say, fun, but just you're doing other stuff rather than sitting and talking. And even then, when you maybe express your emotions with your mates when you're younger, even when you're older, to be honest with you, just depends who you're friends with. They might be like, oh, like you said, oh, stop being a faggot, stop being this, stop being that. Oh, why are you being a sissy? We don't share our emotions. Or you might
Right.
have got that from your father, you might have got that from your uncle. So even the people that it comes from as well can have such a reinforcement on your life. There's a journaling book that I used to write in, and for anyone that keeps listening to the podcast, everyone keeps hearing me saying I need to do better with my journaling, but I definitely do. But in the book, and it's called The Mind Journal for anybody that wants to check it out. I'll put it into the show notes. But it's got all these different feelings, and different words for them. And, it's not just, oh, angry, sad. I can't remember all the words for them, but there's such an extensive word, and it's just a little tick. You just tick how you're feeling, and that can so help you just be like, okay, yeah, this is how I'm feeling, or that's how I'm feeling. And then you start to learn more words to describe what's going on with you, which can help you, but then also help anyone that's involved with you or around you, if you can better express the words that you are, what the feelings that you're going through.
I think journaling is a great tool. I'm glad you mentioned that because I have a friend who gave me what he called a feeling chart.
Mm.
And there was like 25 faces with a different expression. And underneath each face it would say sad, happy, gloomy, uncomfortable. There would be a word to describe the face, and it helped me to like make a connection. It took me a while because it was all like German. Because I never learned how to talk about how I feel.
Yeah, it was weird. It was native
And
to you.
we live in a society where people don't ask you how you feel, they ask you what you do. So you go to a social gathering, the first question is, what do you do? So they want to know about your work or your school life. No one wants to know about your mental life, your emotional journey.
Mm.
People don't care about that. They want to know, what institution do you go to? And then you can start bragging about, oh, I got a master's degree and this and that, right? But no one wants to hear that you actually are hurting, or that you're sad, or that you're uncomfortable, or that you feel insecure, or whatever human emotion you have. That's not part of our natural social consciousness. And you're right about girls; they are socialized differently. But also, there's a guy named Dr. Ed Garns, who someone I respect. He has a podcast with Motown Lee, and they talk about mental health all the time. And he talks about how Black men have historically not engaged in professional therapy, but we've had therapeutic conversations. So we talk in the locker room, we talk at the baseball field, we talk in grandma's kitchen table, we talk in the carpool, we talk at the wedding ceremony. So
at the
we've
barber
had
shop,
places where we actually, the barbershop, we have therapeutic conversations. We're just not collectively invested in going to a professional because we have all these messaging about he's crazy, he's soft, he's weak. And so we have to reprogram our ideas around manhood.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the issues that you are seeing amongst men, definitely in this sort of 21st century?
Some of the issues, oh my God, there's so many. We have what I call manhunt anxiety. So when two men greet each other, they may not feel comfortable displaying affection, because if they display affection, they may be accused of being homosexual. So in other parts of the world, it's natural for a man to kiss another man on the lips, the cheek, the forehead, the neck. But here, homie, don't play that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have that type of anxiety where two guys, they naturally do care about each other, but they're afraid to hug each other. And I think that's a huge issue, because it kind of like distorts our natural sense of connection and longing and brotherhood, that touch. We're afraid to touch each other because we're afraid we're going to be labeled as Little Nas X. You know what I'm saying? Because we have all these issues about being strong and tough and control, and we don't want to be seen as vulnerable. So that's one issue. Obviously for me, white supremacy rears its ugly head in so many ways. In the way we are can't find a job, not able to vote. You have mass incarceration. You have the prison industrial complex. That's a huge issue, right? So you have a Black man and a white man with the same drug, and they're penalized completely differently. Like in America, they have this thing called 100-to-1 disparity. And when Obama became president, he reduced it to 18-to-1. So if you had 5 grams of cocaine and you're Black, they offer you 30 years of prison sentence. If you're white, you get 100 hours of community service.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So it's the same substance, but you're treated differently because the criminal justice system sees us as criminal anyway. So we don't feel safe. Cops are stopping us. We have this thing called stop and frisk.
Yeah, we have stop and searches here.
Yeah, so you go to jail, not because you have committed a crime, but because you've been arrested. Then you can't pay the bail, which is racist. So we got so many issues, man. Our issues have issues.
There's layers.
Yeah,
You're like an onion. I remember before we started this conversation, you saw my Ava DuVernay shirt, for anyone else there.
Yeah.
And she made a film called it's about the 12th Amendment.
No, the 13th Amendment.
The 13th Amendment, yeah, 13.
Documentary.
Yeah, which is absolutely amazing. Like amazing in terms of like just how she did the documentary, but it's very interesting to see how the incarceration system works in the US. And even you said about bail, it's crazy that people will put themselves into debt to get someone out of bail for something which may not even really seem like a real issue, like, getting caught with cocaine, or, there's people in jail that have now been in jail for years because they had weed on them. And it's like, and now, which is the irony, I remember I was listening to something And they were talking about like the irony of that. Now that weed is legal in a lot of places in the US, it's like we've got white men making money, like big business money off of marijuana, yet there's people rotting in prison that got 30 years because they had 5 grams of weed on them. And usually it's black people. And so it's, if anybody that wants to watch that, also going to put it into the show notes, so you can check it out.
No, that was a powerful documentary. I've seen it several times. And I like the fact that she used different people from different backgrounds to share about how that amendment affects our society today.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just sort of crazy that it was literally like, it's like, yeah, they abolished slavery, but then in the 13th Amendment, it's like, yeah, but if you do anything wrong, then we're basically going to kind of put you back into that.
Except for criminals or except for indentured servants. So,
yeah.
So we're still perceived as criminal. And that affects our humanness. You know, there are places around the country where black men are still called boy.
Mm-hmm.
We're still called boy. 55, 60 years old man walking down the street, hey boy. Like, you still get that in 2023.
Which is crazy. Can you, and I was talking to someone the other day, but can you explain just the context of that, in terms of why that is sort of so demeaning?
Why that exists?
Why it exists, but also why it is so demeaning to black people in the US especially.
Well, I mean, we came here against our will, unlike anybody else, and we were put on the auction block. You know, now we're on TikTok, you know, and so, you know, we were stripped naked. Our families were destroyed. Our religion was taken away, our customs, our music, our art, our dance, our education. And also, we were not perceived as men when we first came here. So we was perceived as animal, savage, criminal. So we were racialized. We did not have a gender when we first got here. You know, so for a long time, we never felt, and many of us still don't feel like whole human beings. You know, there's an article in the Constitution that says that we are 3/5 of a human being. And that's how we're treated by the police and by the law. And so, you know, there's a law that says that black man has no rights that a white man has to respect. That's Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. And the law still treats us that way. And so a cop can shoot us and kill us, and that cop doesn't go to prison. That cop still keeps his job and gets a book deal, which turns into a movie, and he actually gets rewarded for killing my brother. And because we see it over and over again, that trauma becomes normalized and we're no longer outraged. And so we don't do anything. It has become normal to feel like we don't belong in a country that brought us here against our will. And it's really sad and it's really unfair, and it bothers me a lot to see how our brothers are mistreated in this society. And, you know, this book is an opportunity for us to really talk about how we feel, to take back our power, and to change the way we see ourselves, to shift the paradigm, and to start to view ourselves as human, as real, as valuable, as respected, as affirming, as loving, as feeling people, as flawed, as complex, you know, as nuanced. We have many layers. Everybody's not going to be LeBron James. You know, the NBA does not want another LeBron James. They're going to Asia, and, you know, baseball used to be America's pastime. Now everybody who plays baseball is coming from the Dominican Republic or Cuba or Honduras. So black men slowly have been moving away from society because we're not valued here. We're still not wanted. You know, we're still America's most hunted, but we're not wanted.
That's deep. That's deep. Yeah. And I guess just the word boy, just sort of, as you're saying, we got genderless. So it's sort of like, it's like, no, you're like, it's demeaning, isn't it? It's sort of like, no, you're not worth the respect of being a man. Like, you don't, I'm not valuing you as the man that you are. I'm going to demean you and, you know, I guess make you childlike so I can enforce my will upon you to a certain extent.
Exactly. So we always have to deal with the idea that we're not seen as men, we're seen as boy. And, you know, when you're a boy, you don't really have a lot of authority or dominion. And people can kind of like have their way with you, and that's pretty much how it's going.
Yeah, it's definitely I think there's definitely sort of challenges that we sort of face as Black men, and I know there's a lot of discourse out there where it's like, oh, men are complaining, when they're, and to be fair, it's usually said by women, which was a bit of a weird one. It's like, oh, why are men complaining about what they're going through? But I think there is a real thing where and obviously we can only speak to Black men, and maybe that applies more to white men, but even just for men in general, I think there's been sort of a disconnect in terms of that. We've had female empowerment, which is awesome, which is great, but there has been, I guess, a neglection, and men have been sort of neglected in a certain extent, that we're not able to express our emotions. We're not able to, be vulnerable. And these are things like emotional intelligence. These are things which are needed for us in society. And so I think that has been sort of quite neglected, and, it sort of just gets brushed away under the carpet of, oh, you're a man, it's okay. You just deal with it. Whereas like, actually, no, we need to talk. We need the spaces to be able to talk. We need to be able to allow men to cry. I don't know if you're on TikTok, but I see so many TikToks of this, like, oh, if a man cries, it gives me the ick, like, and it's like, it turns me off. And I'm like, a man expressing their emotions turns you off? What, because we're not manly anymore? Like, is that what we're defining manly by, whether you can suppress your emotions? And it's quite sad, because there'll be men out there that are suffering, and they're going to just get viewed as, oh, you're not really a man if you talk about your emotions, if you feel, if you show love. But then on the other aspect as well, there's probably a lot of women complaining, saying that the men aren't talking, the men aren't being emotional enough. But from all sides, men and women, you're getting stigmatized for not talking. So it's a bit of a, I don't know if a catch-22 is the word, but bit of a conundrum, really.
Yeah, and I understand how women have had to deal with heteronormative misogyny for centuries.
Mm.
In terms of the institutions, the educational system, women still making 76 cents on a dollar, etc. So they still have to fight those battles to be seen and heard and viewed and respected. And yet, I think some women may not be used to a Black man actually saying how he feels. And so they may feel threatened, because I'm not on TikTok, by the way.
Don't get
But
on it.
I do know on social media there's a lot of male bashing, and women, for example, we have this whole Me Too movement, right? And we have the contemporary gender theorists, we have the feminism, so women are more likely to get tenure in an American higher learning institution. There's very few places where you can go and learn about Black male studies in college. That's just a fact. It's not my opinion. And so you look at something like Black Lives Matter, right? Black Lives Matter was started by 3 women who responded to George Zimmerman being acquitted for murdering Trayvon Martin, a Black boy. Yet, their organization had no funding or programs or services for Black boys and men. 0. So meanwhile, all around the world, people are shouting Black Lives Matter. Places, all white spaces where they're all got signs, Black Lives Matter, and yet the organization in its conception did not fund or have programs or services for Black boys and men. And so even though they responded to Trayvon Martin, other boys like Trayvon Martin did not benefit, because they were serving women of color, LGBTQIA+, the elderly, immigrant, everybody but Black boys and men. Now, if I say this on television, I'm going to jail.
Yeah, you're getting cancelled, which is even worse than jail.
Exactly. But this is the truth. Black Lives Matter as an organization did not benefit Black boys and men. They got up to $90 million in donations. Not one penny went to an organization or institution that serves Black boys and men. And now they're just they're a hashtag now.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So that's what we're fighting against is our voice. You know, we got one black man on the Supreme Court. Don't get me started. It's like, you know, we really still are fighting and fighting to be heard, to be seen. And you're right, it does seem like we're complaining, but that's just the word that they use to shut us up. You know, like they told LeBron James to shut up and dribble. You know what I'm saying? So people really don't like to hear black men talk about their feelings because they really are uncomfortable and they don't know what to think about it and they don't know how to handle it. It's unusual. But you know, we're here and we need safe spaces to talk about how we feel so we don't harm ourselves or other people.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And yeah, it's a bit of a weird one where we exist as black men, because obviously we benefit from the patriarchy, but then there's also the element of race that, you know, is discriminatory and affects us as well. And for black women, they've got race and they've got sexism that are facing them too. So it's a very odd place to exist in.
Yeah, but that's another misconception, Tino. Patriarchy does not benefit black men, and neither does privilege. Patriarchy and privilege was constructed during the times when we were on the plantation. And it's really rooted in genealogy, because when we were born here against our will, the term gender was associated with family and race, not biology or sex. And so white women owned our children and they told them how to think and behave. They were not seen as boys and girls. They were seen as property, right? And so there was no gender when it comes to people of African descent who were brought here against their will. And so when you talk about patriarchy and privilege, there's this idea that patriarchy encompasses all men because of their gender. That's not how that term was created. That's not how it was realized. Patriarchy was about genealogy, right? It was not about gender because we didn't have a gender when we got here for a long time. And even now, if you think of gender, you may not think of men. Women have co-opted, this is my opinion, women have co-opted the term gender, right? Just like when people talk about feminism, feminism was rooted in patriarchy. Feminism complements patriarchy. There's a book called The Man Not by Dr. Tommy Curry. It's about race, class, genre, and the limits of black manhood. And he talks about how terms like gender and race did not benefit our people when we got here. They've been misconstrued. Even Alice Walker she coined the term womanist because she understood that feminism was rooted in racism. So when you talk about feminism, the people who have power are not black women.
Yeah. True.
So when something happens to a woman, they don't ask a black woman how you think about it. They ask a white woman because a white woman is considered to be the experts on all things female. Same thing with a black man. If something happens to a man, they're not going to ask a black man, what do you think? Because a black man is not considered to be intellectual. He doesn't have that capacity in our society's mind, their racist mind. They don't see us as who we are. This is another reason why we got to talk about how we feel, because we all have to deal with these microaggressions, right? So you go to the hospital and the woman behind the counter sees you, but she doesn't see you, right? But she sees the white woman. Hi, how are you today? How can I help you? She sees you, what you want. You know what I mean? Like we're somehow a threat and we're feared. People are uncomfortable. There's many complexities to our masculinity, and that term, again, should be, in my opinion, it doesn't serve us.
Yeah.
We need a new language.
Definitely. What would you say that new language is? What ideas would you have for that?
Well, we can start with culture science and who the souls black men speak.
Plug.
Yeah. No, I just think anything constructed can be deconstructed. So I just think the term masculine or masculinity, it doesn't serve black men anymore. I don't know if it ever did. There's just so many of us with different schools of thought and different beliefs, and morals and values. I don't have a word today. Yeah, I
That's
have to get
fine.
back with you.
Maybe we can create one, but I
Yeah,
agree with
yeah.
you. Like that was sort of one of the main reasons why I started Black and Raw, because and if you check out my website, it shows what we do. And like masculinity, I don't think, like, just forget about black men, just men in general. I don't think the word masculinity served us anyway, because it's always viewed in one way, and it's like masculinity is this box. If you don't fit in this box, you're not masculine. And
Right.
then, you know, you can add everything else onto it. You can add race, you can add culture, you can add sex, but just the word masculinity is so boxy. There's probably a better word for it. It doesn't allow for the nuances. It doesn't allow for there to be something else that can be considered masculine. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think the word masculinity ever served black men at all.
I don't even know who created that word, but it it was not created to benefit our humanity.
Mm.
It's just like now. I mean, when we got here, they, our African ancestors were enslaved, and then they called us slaves, and then we were Negro, and then we were colored, and then we were Afro American and African American, and then we were Black, and Afro Latino, and like we're still trying to find our cultural identity in 2023. Other people don't have that issue. When you're Italian, you're Italian.
You're Italian, yeah.
When you're, you know what I'm saying? I know other people don't have to deal with that, but you still have, if you have 100 black men in a room, they may not all identify as black.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, African
Now you
American.
got cisgender and non-binary, and listen, I can't keep up. It's just too much.
I think people are trying to find a way to identify themselves, because I don't think the identifications that exist, like we always have debates in my house, and I'm always sort of saying, yeah, but it's a social construction, because at uni when I was doing criminology, like we learned that almost everything is a social construction. Like someone said, this is what this is, and it's usually someone that didn't have an understanding of the nuances, or that didn't care about the nuances. And so I think everyone is sort of just trying to find how they can identify themselves in a world that really wants to put everybody in boxes.
Yeah, yeah, but those boxes, they don't have enough room for everybody.
No.
Yeah.
And they're restrictive. They're boxes for a reason. I want to smash the
Yeah,
box and just
I think everyone, can find their own way, their own path, and hopefully we can learn how to be more accepting of people who are different. But the term masculine, it doesn't work, in my opinion.
definitely. And so I wanted to find out for you, in terms of for your own mental health, um, what has been sort of the strategies or the tools or things that have just sort of helped you on your journey to be sort of to have good mental health, even when there's days where you're struggling, like what sort of helped you come out of, I guess sometimes people describe it as the darkness. I don't know if the darkness is the word, but yeah, to come out of it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tina. That's a wonderful question. Because I think we need to talk more about solutions and tools and choices and options. And therapy helped me tremendously. It was the first time in my life that I actually felt safe talking to somebody about my life. My thoughts, my feelings, my trauma, my joys, my goals, my aspirations, my fears, my anxieties. And I know therapy is not a one size fits all situation, but it definitely helped me. In therapy, I learned how to utilize the tool of journaling. Someone suggested that you just write down your feelings for 15 minutes. That was very helpful. Exercise is very helpful. Nutrition, very helpful. I'm type 2 diabetes now, and I lost 15 pounds. But my weight goes up and down like Oprah. So, I've had to really be more mindful about what I put into my body. So that's really important. Meditation has been a very helpful tool, just quieting my mind for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, either listen to the sound of nature, sound of music, or no sound at all. Prayer, definitely. That's the first thing I do when I get up is I pray and I thank God for waking me up, and I ask for his will to be done. going for a walk just to clear my mind, clear my thoughts, and being in touch with society, being around nature. I live, like I said, 2 blocks away from Central Park, so I can sit on the bench and I can watch the kids. Right, watching children is very therapeutic. Just seeing their beauty and their joy and their innocence before they get corrupted
Before
by
they see the
TikTok.
world. Yeah. That's coming even earlier and earlier, that is.
Yeah, so that's important, being around nature, seeing the animals, and just the whole aspect of joy, and finding what that joy means to you. Like, for example, this morning, I got up and I went to a thrift shop because I love thrift clothing. I love thrift shops and vintage clothing, and I bought a couple of T-shirts and some shorts, just something that I feel good about myself.
Yeah, doing things you enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think there's so many things that we can do, but it takes effort, and sometimes I can be so depressed, I don't have the physical energy to actually get up and move my body. I'm just so like stuck in quicksand, so just having those conversations with people, using the phone, calling my friends. It's a great tool, is having friends who have compassion and empathy and understanding, who know how to listen.
Yeah,
Listening
huge, absolutely huge.
God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I can do twice as much listening and half as much talking. Because sometimes we just, and you can't get it out because you get interrupted. You're cutting me off. You're finishing my sentence. I'm like, can I talk?
just let
I
me
just need
breathe.
to talk.
So let me just, give me the space.
Yeah. So those are some of the tools that I have.
Yeah, I think those are actually really good tools, and everyone's going to realize how much I'm lacking in all the things that I said I'm supposed to do. But meditation is something which I hugely vouch for. I use an app called Headspace, and that really helps in terms of and there's so many different courses on there. I know there's one called Calm as well, which people can use. And just the fact that you can sort of sit down, just be able to control your breath, be able to be in the moment and, be present. I think it can help us with so many things. Like even when you are getting, like when sometimes someone's getting really anxious and they're hyperventilating and and like all the worries are flowing through their head. I feel like sometimes when you've got the tools of meditation or prayer or understanding, okay, let me go for a walk right now, or a lot of people talk about grounding, and I like to sort of go out onto the grass barefoot, and there's so much research out there which shows that like our synapses sort of connect with the earth and sort of like literally ground you. Nature is mad and the world is mad, and how it works with our brains is also mad as well. But it's crazy that there are just small things in which you can do. In terms of, you said, going out for nature, seeing kids, seeing how happy they are and full of joy, it just reminds you that there is joy in your life. Like, even if things are going dark for you, I know a lot of people also say practice gratitude as well. And when you do these things, it sort of reminds you that, okay, the world isn't like, it isn't all dark and scary. There is light, there is hope, there is joy. And I think those are the things that can sort of get you out of those situations.
I'm glad you mentioned gratitude because someone suggested that I write a gratitude list, which I had never heard of before. And this guy, he said, I want you to go home, write down 20 things you're grateful for, and call me back in a half an hour. And I did it, and I've been doing that consistently every 90 days for the last 28 years, right? I write down 20 new people, places, and things in my life that I'm grateful for. And that does something to my spirit. It continues with awakening my spirit and lets me know that God is working with me. I'm not alone. And that there are people who really do love me and accept me for who I am. And I can get my needs met. And also, one more thing, Tino, is laughter, right? Laughter is a healing tool. I enjoy comedy. So sometimes when I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling detached or uncomfortable, I'll put on Richard Pryor, or Robin Harris, or Patrice O'Neal, or Cedric the Entertainer, Eddie Murphy, and the laughter, it just does something to my body, and it kind of gets me out of that darkness, and I start to feel human again, that
Mm.
little kid. Because when kids are laughing, it's just pure joy.
Yeah.
But then sometimes an adult will come along and say something like, go sit down or pick up your toys or whatever, and then now you get mad. Like you go from laughter to rage just like that, and before you know it, I don't like her.
Yeah. She took away my joy. I don't vibe that. I don't vibe that.
And that can affect how you go into the classroom, because now you have anxiety about, okay, I'm afraid to go in here because she's going to hurt my feelings.
Mm.
And then she's going to do it in front of the other kids, which is going to make me feel embarrassed and humiliated. So I'm not going to school today. And, so we get the wrong lesson because we weren't given, the right type of love.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm not a parent, not yet. And I know it's probably quite hard as well, and I think people are sort of doing the best they can with the tools they have. But I think there definitely are behaviors and stuff that parents display towards their children that definitely you maybe don't think of the negative impact, but I think it definitely does. Like, I think one thing in African households, which is sort of I'm hoping is changing now, but definitely when I was younger, it was sort of children should be seen, not heard. And if you want to say something as a child, you sort of just get shut down, and it's like, oh no, you're being rude, or you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a child. And the impact that still can have as you as an adult, I've even seen it with myself. If I want to say something and I'm just like, oh, it's not even worth it. I'm just like, even if I get shouted at or if I just get ignored, it's not even worth it, to be honest with you. So I'll just leave it and go upstairs and just do whatever I'm going to do just to forget about it. But
yeah,
it starts off from when you're a child. And, I think children should be given a space to, be able to say what they think, be able to say how they feel and not get shut down immediately, because then you're not allowing your child to have the confidence to speak for themselves and say stuff. I probably, like, I'm not bashing my parents. I absolutely love my parents. But I think as they've gotten older, they became a lot more chill. But I think as the firstborn, I maybe didn't get the most chillest parents. Love you guys, because I know my dad listens to every episode. So love you,
How many
dad.
brothers and sisters do you have?
I have a little brother and a little sister. My sister's 17 and my brother's turning 19 soon. Maybe he already is 19. I
And
think,
you're the oldest?
yeah, and I'm the oldest, yeah.
What's it like being the oldest?
Oh, someone asked me this the other day, actually. Um, it's interesting because you sort of feel like a parent at times, especially when my siblings were younger. Like the gap between me and my brother is 6 years, and then my sister's 8 years. So like even when my sister was born, my brother never let me hold him or play with him. My parents actually said a really funny story that when he came out, and when I saw him when it was just a proper baby, because I was praying for a brother. Like I was there, like, I want a brother, I want a brother, I want a brother. I think I wanted someone to play with. And then when I saw him, my parents were like, "Yeah, you said, is that it?" Because I was like, "Was he not going to be ready made to play with?" So my brother didn't really let me interact with him and play with him when he was younger. I think that maybe, I think now our relationship has definitely grown, and we are a lot closer. But I think at the beginning, it sort of didn't make us as close. But I can't blame him for that. He was a baby.
Right.
But my sister, I was proper. I would always take care of my sister. She would suck on my thumb when she was a baby. Like she would let me hold her and stuff like that. And I think I have a really good relationship with both of my siblings. But I think with my sister, I think because we're also quite similar, our relationship is quite strong, sort of just naturally. Whereas I think with my brother, we've maybe it's taken more time to grow with it. So you feel like a parent when you sort of feel like a pseudo parent because you're not a parent, but then you have the responsibilities of sort of being a big brother and a big parent. And I always say that firstborns are the guinea pig children because our
Right.
parents just sort of experimented with the firstborns. It's like, does that work? Does that work? That didn't work with this one, so let's try something else with the other one.
Right.
And I think as my parents have gotten older, their emotional intelligence has definitely grown. And obviously with experience, because my parents had me when my mom was 22 and my dad was 25. So they had me quite young. I couldn't, if I had a kid now, I could not imagine, what that would be like. But I think with my brother and sister, they definitely got sort of the more chill parents, but that was the more older, wiser, emotionally intelligent parents. And like I said, I'm not bashing my parents here because I love them to death. Like they're the best. But I definitely think that firstborns usually sort of get the brunt of it. But
Did your
you're
brother and sister ever feel like you were treated like that they were treated unfairly because you were older? That you got somehow you benefited because you're older, you got more money, more time, more opportunities. Did they ever?
I do wonder about that actually. That's a good thought. I think I definitely need to have a conversation with them about that. I think because I had sort of 6 years with my parents as an only child. So I think by the time my parents came along, I was like, ah, yeah, man, I'm okay. Like you sort of then also go into Big Brother mode. It's like, yeah, no, I'm sort of okay with all the attention that I got for those 6 years. But I think for my brother and for my sister, because they're only 2 years apart, I think for them there's a lot more competition between each other and a lot more sort of like I think definitely when they're younger, jockeying for mom and dad's attention. Um, so I don't know. I don't know whether they think that of me really. But obviously as
I mean, they may
firstborn,
not want to say it out loud, but just because
yeah.
I've got three brothers and three sisters. I'm the fifth out of seven.
Mm,
And I remember one year there was this movie called The Exorcist,
have a little
and
bit.
Exorcist was rated R, so you had to be 17. Now I was 15, and my older sister, one of my older sisters was 16. So my parents took my two older brothers and two older sisters to this R-rated movie, but they didn't take me. So I was pissed off. I'm like, okay, she's 16. It's an R-rated movie. You got to be 17. Why are you taking
Yeah.
her? You're not taking me.
Yeah. It's only one
Like
year
that.
apart as well. There's not that much difference either.
It's just 1 year. So I was so mad. Like when they came home, I didn't want to hear nothing about the movie. I just, oh my God. So something that small, I mean, you'll be amazed at how your perception of, okay, because you're older, you get a bigger allowance, right? So, you get $10, I get $3. I don't think that's fair, but because you're older, they assume or they want you to be more responsible. And there are dynamics, there's sibling rivalry and
Yeah. I definitely think also as the older brother you get as the older sibling you get held to a higher standard. Like
yes.
when things would happen, it's like, well, he did this to me, and it's like, yeah, but you're the older one, you've got to be the more responsible one, and I think those are definitely good life lessons, but like when you're a kid, that's not what you want to hear. It's just like, no, they've upset me as well, like I'm annoyed too. Where's the you shouldn't have done this. So I definitely think there is an interesting sort of relationship in terms of where you are as younger, older siblings. I think there's loads of research which show that like the older siblings are usually more likely to be leaders and more sort of, I don't know if more driven, but like definitely sort of maybe have more discipline and things like that. I'll put something into the show notes for people to go and check out on that, on the statistics. But yeah, I think it's quite interesting, the dynamic of being an older brother, I will say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's worthy of a film. I really do, because I mean, there's so many people who can identify with not just being the older person, but how they are perceived by their younger siblings and how they were treated by their parents or their neighbors or people at school. Because we all went to the same school, so
Yeah.
they knew my older brother and siblings, and so they expected me to be like them, but I'm not like them the same way. We have the same last name, but I play tennis. They play basketball. Why do you play tennis? That's a sissy sport. So you get that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I had to deal with the residue or the expectation of being younger, and they thought I should be like them. And I'm trying to carve out my own path. Like I like Elton John as much as I like Marvin Gaye. But because I like Elton John, people say I want it to be white. This is crazy. This is America. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
When you're black and you live in a certain neighborhood and you like pop and rock, people accuse you of betraying your own people.
Yeah. I got that quite a lot when with my friends, I love Frank Sinatra, one of the best jazz musicians ever to exist. And I got that a lot from people, just from friends as well. It's like, oh, you don't listen to like Kanye or J. Cole, or you don't really listen to rap. And I was like, well, I do, but like Frank Sinatra is one of my favorite musicians.
Right, right.
I love jazz. Like that's just it. And and one thing as well, I remember I was doing I went with my girlfriend to do this. She was doing the TEDx talk audition, and they had done all the auditions, and then they're like, oh yeah, if anyone else wants to talk, go up. So then they're like, oh, go and tell them about Black and Roll. Go and tell them about Black and Roll. So I was like, okay. And then I remember I said that, and then there's a black girl in front of me, and she was like, what the hell? Like I was also like, yeah, what the hell? Like it was ridiculous because jazz is also, I mean, black people sort of invented jazz. So it was a bit like, what? But as a kid, you don't have that thought of like, forget what you say, I'm just gonna love what I love. It hits you harder when you're younger, because I think you're still finding yourself. So when people put labels on you, it hits a lot harder.
Which is another aspect of masculinity, because in our society, people have they assign identities to be masculine. So if you're masculine, you're supposed to like hip hop, right? If you like pop music, that's supposed to be unmasculine. I don't know who made up these rules, but that's how it is in our society. I love Three Dog Night, but I also love Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I love them equally both, but growing up I lived in Chicago, which where I was born and raised. Chicago was the most racially segregated city in society. And it was like 40% black, 40% white, and other people we didn't care about. This is how it was. So that's not good.
Birthplace of Obama. Was he from Hawaii?
So growing up, I liked different types of music, but my love for music was not respected because of my gender. Now, if you're a girl, it's okay to like Cyndi Lauper and Patti LaBelle. But if you're a boy and you like Elton John and George Michael, people question your sexuality, right? They don't question your sexuality if you like, Katy Perry.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they don't, but boys get questioned about their taste in music because of their gender in ways that girls don't. And that's another reason why masculinity really doesn't work for us, because it's just not really, it's not genuine, it's not heartfelt. And it doesn't, like you said, all the layers and nuances. There's so much to us, to our humanity, but popular culture doesn't show you all the different layers. They show you LL Cool J, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't get no. So anybody else is somehow less than and deviant or suspect, and so you really can't wear pink.
Yeah, I love wearing pink.
Bright colors. I'm a Leo.
Yeah.
But if you wear bright colors, your manhood is challenged. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I recently my dad was my sister had bought like those Udo hoodies, like the long ones which are like fluffy inside. People wear them a lot in winter. And my dad was like, oh, does everyone, because he wanted to buy one for himself because he saw my sister's, and so he kept taking my sister's one. So he was like, right, I'm gonna buy myself one for this year. And then he was like, oh, does anybody else want one? So he bought everyone in the family one. And at first I saw a because I love bright colors as well. I love wearing color. And there was a Cameroon one, sort of ruby color, like a dark maroon. And I was like, oh, I want that one. That looks really nice. But then it was sold out. So I was like, I kind of want the pink one actually. Like I'll get the pink one. And then like even in my family, my sister was like, Dad, you can't let him buy the pink one. And I was like, why can't I have the pink one? She's like, boys don't wear pink. Like, well, why are you getting a pink one? And I was just like, I'm gonna get the pink, and I like the pink. Okay, the pink's great. I was also like, I don't want to be boring. Everyone gets black and gray, and I was just like, I want color. Like, there's nothing wrong with wearing color. It shouldn't be genderized. And I mean, I think as black men, we look great in color. It suits our complexion. So why can't we just diversify what we have without it being labeled as, being labeled as not manly. Just doesn't make sense. It's just
I
that's why I want to smash this box that we keep having and just break it all down.
Yeah, yeah. We need a whole new paradigm shift.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So Mark, I've loved this whole conversation that we've had, and I just wanted to ask you one final question, which I ask all my guests. And say if there's a young Black boy that's listening to this conversation, how can something that you know help them with an understanding of themselves?
Wow. Well, I know now that I am loved. I know now that I am trustworthy. I know now that I am valued. I know now that I am beautiful. I know now that I am confident. I know now that I am worthy. I know now that I am accepted. I don't have to dim my light. I can be quirky. I can be a geek. I can be weird. I can be unconventional. I can wear pink and orange and yellow after fall and not give a fuck. Excuse me. I can just be all of me that was on the inside that I was trying to mask on the outside because I wanted you to like me. And I don't have to do things because I think if I do it, you'll like me. I do it because it makes me feel good about who I am.
Yeah, bro. So yeah, Mark, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation. And is there anything you'd like to plug before we go? I know your book as well, but is there anything else you want to plug too?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I also have a website. The website is one word: Cultural Silence WoundedSouls.com. On the website, you'll find there's a media page where you'll find a conversation, poetry, videos, film, and the resources page is very powerful because there are other books you can read, there are other podcasts you can listen to, there are other helplines you can call, there are videos you can watch, there are service providers you can access, organizations you connect with. So I wanted this book to be a community resource where people can get access. A lot of times we don't have access, we don't have the insurance or the funds. Like, you don't necessarily have to have money to have a conversation. And I want people to like, okay, this is something that I can actually do. If I need somebody to talk to, now I know who to call, where to go, and I'm okay.
No, bro. So yeah, I'll put your website into the show notes if people didn't get it as well, so you can just click onto that and check it out. And go and check out my website, guys, because I always put like little extra resources on there, little tidbits as well. I love adding YouTube videos onto there because I watch YouTube all the time, so it definitely does help. So yeah, thank you, Mark, for coming onto the podcast. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. No, it's all good.
All
it's
right.
all good.
Peace and love.
Peace.
Hey guys, so that is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed talking to Mark, and I think him just talking about his own experience of mental health just makes this conversation more vulnerable, but also hopefully that everyone else can relate to some of the experiences that Mark was talking about. And for anyone that is suffering with their own mental health, there are plenty of resources and websites that you can use, that you can talk to somebody, or even figure out ways that can help you with your own mental health. We talked about here finding joy, finding things that make you happy, relieving yourself of maybe some of the negative emotions that you are experiencing. And so there's loads of stuff that you can do that can help with your mental health, and I really hope this conversation can help you find those things. And yeah, guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for subscribing, because you're going to subscribe, and we'll talk soon.